Hello everybody, it's Mike Levin on Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. And today I thought I would install Nbdev with you. Nbdev, you say? What is that? Well, it is a library that you can install alongside your Jupyter Notebooks to turn it into a more developer-friendly environment. So this might be surprising to you, me being a Vim person as I am, and I thought I would talk about how, I'm going to forego the discussion of my, unlikely falling in love with Jupyter Notebook and more recently Jupyter Lab, and just say that what I do is I typically keep a directory called Github. You've probably seen me use it. When I open a new terminal, first thing I do is I drop down into a subdirectory called Github. And that's where I keep my various repos that I clone. I haven't done many yet on this brand new laptop that I've hardly settled into yet, but my journal, keeping my Vim configuration here, and a few other various helper files that I use for kind of global environment variables when I move from machine to machine, sbin, that kind of stuff. And here is Jupyter Lab as I always have it running in tab 1. And here is the introduction to Nbdev at fast.ai. So that gets me really fast down to this point where I just begin the tutorial. I'll just super skim over this. I have a secret weapon thing, and I have over the years invented my own very proto Ruby on Rails type system, general frameworks for making tedious, typical app development work easier. And that has since become all the rage, and my attention has then moved to the actual language itself. And even though I've become a Vim guy, IPython notebooks are a wonderful environment for exploring and trying stuff out. And so I just do the general practice of transforming my notebooks into .py files using this nbconvert thing that's built in. However, it turns out that this has become a refined art form, even a science, turning notebook repositories into Python packages. The conversion I did here manually is auto-synchronized the way one might really desire to do it. And so that's what I'm doing today. And we're going to start with cloning an existing GitHub repo. That's what the main thing in the tutorial coming up is. You can alternatively use the nbdev new command in a GitHub repo. You got to make your repo public. You got to make sure that Git hooks can be activated in your local repo. And so that means you got to have it public, at least initially. And then you change your local settings inside a settings.ini file. And then you run command line stuff, which I'm not really sure what it is yet to make it happen. So here we are now going to the site. And I'm going to show you the 3 different links it gives for getting started. It takes a minute to really absorb what you're looking at here. They jump into, use case examples, why this is a good system. And then it shows you here, this is how you get started. Pip install nbdev if you're on a pip-oriented system, like my Windows subsystem. Or you can conda install if you're on a conda-like system, like the Windows side of my environment. So what a great opportunity to show my terminal shells here. This is the Unix-like environment. This is the Linux-like environment. And I'll bring up Anaconda in my new virtual environment, which we know we have because we see it right there. So everything I do here is conda commands. I can show you that will work with conda. I can show you that because I type conda and the command comes up. So let's see. Okay, different operating systems, different clear commands. I always have to adapt. Anywho, one of my conda, my conda install will go here, my pip install will go here, and then I'll have nbconvert installed on both sides. But just to make sure the point is clear that this is the next step, because it shows it tiny here, and then it shows you how to git clone and have it through a slightly different technique local. But then it shows you getting started, the tutorial, the minimal end-to-end example, and the docs. Okay, there's also release notes, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to show you the Nbdev tutorial, which is really the next thing that should come up after skimming through the homepage of the thing, which gives very minimal information on actual solid next steps. It makes it, you think it does, because it gives you those first steps up here. However, you really want to go into at least this first tutorial link, which repeats this advice. Okay, good. So we found it in 2 places. And let's do it. Let's get Nbdev without further ado. Copy. Pop over here to, that's the pip install I just picked up. And pip install. Nbdev, a whole bunch of stuff. Now remember, this is under the Ubuntu or Linux side of things that you're seeing. So I'm pip install. Oh, red. Strong indication that I should have used sudo, except you should never really need sudo with pip install, especially under a virtual env. So clear the screen. I believe I can do this to try the install a second time and make sure it's installed properly, like I'm attempting an update. And it does look like it's satisfied, so we'll call that installed for now, right? All right. So we go over to the Anaconda side of things, and we pick up our conda install. We look things through to make sure that the current directory you're in really doesn't matter when executing this command. It's just going to use the conda repo system to put things where it's supposed to put it. So we saw it, the process run past us on the Ubuntu Linux side, and it was quite a number of things being installed. It took a few moments. All right, so Anaconda right off the bat, or the conda system, gives you something much more visual to understand what it's about to do. Proceed, yes. All right, so we have Nbdev installed now. Theoretically, we'll find out for sure as we do our next steps on both of these sides. And they share a directory structure. So I can cd into GitHub from this side, and that's the same GitHub location as I have over here. same 3 directories, these 2 locations. All right. So we're going to just try that nbdev new command that I know you can use without having to clone a repo from GitHub. That's the other path we're going to do now. But while we're here, it's just so easy to, mkdir. That's the DOS side. I'm going to do it from the Linux side. I know the commands better. mkdir. Let's see. We'll call this nbtest1. And then we cd into nbtest1. I'll make the font a little bit bigger. And nbdev new, according to their documentation. And okay, I apparently have not followed the instructions. I probably have done something wrong. I'm going to do that same test here. Make the directory where I'm more comfortable making it. cd into nbtest2 and try nbdev new. Okay, different issue here. So over here, I had some sort of error. It might be that I haven't, done some step, but here it's not even finding the command that's supposed to be there after the fresh conda install. So there might be issues of environment variables where I actually have to start a new tab and stuff. But before we go to either of those thoughts, we're going to check here to make sure I'm doing the right thing. See, they recommend not using the nbdev new as your first step. They recommend cloning the GitHub repo so that steps that I'm sure I'm missing are not left out. Okay, alternatively, you can use a CLI command to create a new nbdev project from an existing GitHub repo that you have cloned locally. You can't just do it fresh from a new directory, okay? So live and learn here. This is interesting stuff. So if I was starting from a cloned repo, this would activate that in an existing cloned repo. So, okay, let me, and I'm presuming it's going to want Python code. My first thought was to do it with my Vim directory. I don't want to do it with my helpers directory. That's too soon to talk about that location. So I would create a new one. Well, we're going to clone. We're going to go the other route. Instead of nbdev new, which maybe I'll show you later, I will do it the way they recommend. So we go to the tutorial where they give the template. So, okay, you see this is my second tab. So this corresponds to the tutorial. So in the tutorial, they give you a template link. We click that. It brings you into GitHub. Now, the thing you have to recognize about what you're seeing here on my screen is that I'm already logged into GitHub. This is going to work easily for me because I'm always logged into GitHub. I'm never not on GitHub, right? So I give it a repository name, and they tell you, have caution because whatever you choose here is going to be your package import name. So when you're working in Python and you are importing things written somewhere else, you're importing a module, and that module / package has a name, which is its namespace, which is how it's known, and it's the thing that comes, that you import, and then that it's the first in that series. It represents the file, so it's important, is what I'm saying. I am rebasing Pipulate. That's what this is really about. I'm going to be using Nbdev for a complete overhaul of Pipulate, where I'll be transitioning its code into the Nbdev system. However, for right now, I'm going to just do a practice directory. I'll call it Pipulate rebase 2, because as you can see, I did this in exercise already. And the description doesn't really matter, but it does matter that it's public for right now. So you create your repository. And so what is happening right here is this repo was created under your account by cloning a pre-existing repo. So now you have this new repository out there that has all this stuff in there automatically because it inherited it from that place that you clicked to in here. Okay, so it's not on your local machine yet. It is actually out on GitHub. So we go to a place where good old-fashioned Git is available. Git clone, github.com:McLevin /Pipulate _rebase 2. CD into that directory, ls-la to get a more accurate view, including what's hidden. And you'll see there's stuff hidden. There are systems at work here, and your number one indication that there's some system keeping track of its files for its own configuration purposes, histories or whatnot, is an invisible directory dropped there. And all these things in the chain have these invisible directories. This is an invisible file here. Is that other one? Nope, that other one for GitHub is a directory. So you could always CD into these things and poke around and see what's in there. This one just says what's going to be ignored by Git as far as keeping things, which is always an issue because we're going to have credential files that we are not going to want as part of our repo, and we're going to filter those out using the git ignore. So anyway, this is a Nbdev directory. Now there's this step for activating the GitHub hooks that I need to show you. That's got to be in the tutorial right here underneath near where it says here are the alternative ways of doing it. Now before you install the GitHub hooks, it does say to edit your settings.ini, and this is probably particularly convenient because you can get to it through Jupyter, and it's one of these files here. So I'm always in Vim, right? I'm almost never not in Vim, at least for my journal over here, if not for also being in a terminal coding somewhere over here. But Jupyter did a wonderful job, and IPython before it, in making this environment where so much is possible. So let's edit our config files. So what are we going to call this? Lib name will be Pipulate. I should probably do _rebase 2, but I don't want to pollute my code with it. This is going to be an example of what rebasing Pipulate is going to look like. The user is my GitHub username. Author is me. branch, I guess main. Okay, author email. I'll use one of the ones I've been exposing here that I never check. That just shows how old school I am. Hotmail.com. I also had an Earl's email that I finally ended up giving up. And that's enough, I do believe, to get started. I should be able to save that. I did a Control S, but I really don't know if that is the save mechanism here. But it says save complete. So file, save file. Wow, it's so interesting having an editor-like environment. It's not full-fledged IDE, but in some ways it is. Jupyter has the same syntax as, say, VS Code. VS Code lifts the same syntax language description files as are used here, not just for syntax here, but for command line completion or whatever that is, the IntelliSense features. Anywho, don't get distracted. What you're doing, now that you've modified the settings.ini, you check back on this one that says, okay, you changed a bunch of stuff. Now you install Git hooks. Now this is really interesting because we have two Nbdev environments I really just put on my machine. I'm going to make sure I recreate those environments because at least the Windows one does appear to be being stubborn about knowing the Nbdev stuff is there. So I'm going to close that Anaconda prompt and bring a new one up. And hopefully Nbdev type things are available. No. CD Github, CD populate rebase 2. And this is one of the locations from which we should be able to activate, install the Git hooks. This is on the Windows side, mind you, under Anaconda. So we know conda is here. I showed you that demonstration before. This is a legit Anaconda conda virtual environment. The Git hooks command is not recognized. Luckily, we have the Ubuntu side. We're in that same directory. I'll do a courtesy flush. And we'll try that same nbdev install git hooks command, which should only succeed if it succeeds success. Because when we cloned that repo and we hit that new button, it was set to public. So there's a step in here where it actually went and found stuff on your repo, and it was only able to do that because the one you created was public. So now that was a pretty big step to get that success. There are some hurdles to get over in getting Nbdev started. I don't even have a clear enough image in my head of it to draw a picture of it here. Maybe I'll give it one shot in a moment, but let's at least get this last step done because, yeah, we installed Git hooks. Edit this file. So we click that. Uses a special syntax, and then it tells us to add a function. Okay, so there's that file. Hey, we're in it. Add this function. Now, I haven't run any of this yet. Let's see what the tutorial says. Okay, we notice how it includes export at the top. Add examples and test. Examples can plot images, so we can do stuff, make it do stuff. Now we build a library. Now you can create your Okay, so I guess we'll do a few things to make it do stuff, right? So we have a function to say hello. Oops, I think it did extra command line completion there. You have to give it an argument. Hello, you. Okay, so it's tested. And it's not really a test that we ran. It's going to tell us how to assert tests. That's really interesting. So we did that. Let's do fancy graphics. Just to satisfy, for those of you who are like, you know, what's the payoff here? Well, you can start doing really interesting stuff with graphics right away, for example. You think you're not in the JavaScript type world where you can like just do stuff and plot stuff and have sliders. You actually are, because of the amount of stuff that comes bundled in with this is actually quite surprising. We assert a test. And now we build a library. This is what I'm really interested in, because this is that synchronizing of the .ipynb files with .py files, which are much better for actual sharing of modules, collaboration, deployment, number of reasons. Note if using a subdirectory to contain the project root. If using a subdirectory to contain those files instead of the project root. No, I'm not. Okay. Now you're ready to create your documentation homepage. Now I don't think I did what they told, what I'm supposed to. This is the command. They're saying run this command. Just run nbbuild lib. Yes, okay. So I'm a slow learner. We're in that directory. Now see how these are the forward slashes. We're in the Ubuntu tab. Now before, you know, I demonstrate it working, I will go over here to the Windows Anaconda tab, and you know, I have no great hope. Yeah, same issue. So this alone is a reason for having the Windows subsystem for Linux. Oh, you have Linux on your machine. To the rescue. It has full access to the same file system as your Windows side does. It's not on a network. It's not because of synchronization services. It just has access to the same file system. So here we are in that same location. I type that command, enter. At least it does something, okay? Not what I want it to do, because it's a bunch of, oh, key error copyright. I haven't finished editing my INI. I got to be an attentive learner, not just a quick learner. So it complained about the copyright key. I guess it really wants that active. Okay. Description. Certain things just have to be finished. Control S, I'm going to trust did a save. Hey, there it is, converted. And so there is presumably an index.php py. Oh no, there's presumably a converted core.py and a index.py somewhere inside of here. So we do an ls. Yeah, so they're not sitting right on the root. Okay, so there are some hidden directories, but before we even look at use of hidden directories, it's probably in things that have, you know, directories at the beginning of their file flag. So I see a docs, right? I see a pipulate. That's of course going to be it, because the other candidates are up in this invisible file area. So we cd into pipulate, and we ls in there, and there we have our core.py, and I'm going to guess index.py cleverly becomes dunder init.py, which has a very special meaning in the Python system. This is basically what gets run automatically to initialize things for any package. So no matter what else is going on inside the main package folder, which I guess can be thought of here as pipulate, but it's very standard to have the two nested directories of nearly the same name when you're making PyPy packages. So I understand the sense here. The file setup begins to be exactly the same as you would do when making a PyPy package. So this would be pipulate in its normal form when I finally do rebase my main pipulate project around Nbdev coming up real soon. I would have pipulate/pipulate exactly as I do now, with most of the heavy lifting taking place inside a underscore init file exactly as I do now in pipulate. That's how I work. So it's good to see that the template stuff that's set up automatically under Nbdev is standard. So what else? Probably way more standard than I work. So the tutorial file is this one here. And so we converted it. Note, if you're using a summary, yep, edit index.ipynb. Now you're ready to create your documentation. Oh, I misunderstood the purpose of it. Okay. You're ready to create your documentation homepage and README file. These are both generated automatically from index.ipynb. So we go over here, we find our index. Whoops. Oh, there's a Docker file there too. It's this I double click. I'll get rid of the Docker one. And it says this is going to be our documentation. You'll see that there's already a line here to import. See that there's already a line there to import your library. Change it to the name you selected in settings.ini. Then add information about how to use your module, and then build the docs. I hate the tabbed thing. I love virtual. You can see why my love for virtual screens. It's so easy to get confused where tabs and then nested tabs and more tabs. It's these tabs I'm looking for. It's not these tabs up here. You've got a sub-tab system in Jupyter Labs that you didn't used to have in Jupyter Notebooks. They very much changed how tabs are handled. It's now a child to a frame, instead of being outside and being tabs to actual whole, Chrome tabs. Okay, Even the concepts are sometimes difficult to express. So it wants us to make some documentation changes. So I can at least throw in a hello world in Markdown. Okay, so I have something that I'll be able to look for. I'll run that. That's a hello world. Now there's another command they want us to run, this build docs. Copy. And we know now to go directly to Ubuntu. If unsure, go to Linux. Can't go wrong. Except when it does. Conversion failed on the following. No such file or directory. Pipulary is core.html. Okay, so core.ipynb. Yeah, it's about modules not being found. So apparently there should be another module that it's looking for named core.html for documentation's sake. I would imagine that's how a system like this would work. So if there's a core.ipynb, core.html. Yeah, no, don't understand. Maybe I have to run another command first. We have a few of these commands that we've been running recently. And there's this build lib one. Maybe you got to build lib before you can build the documentation. Well, I do have some. Okay, so module not found. No module named pipulate. Okay, so I need a module named pipulate for the documentation process to occur. And so I am going to guess if you need a module by a certain name, this gets to the point where you actually want to export things using a namespace. And this is where we read the docs. This is where we read the docs. Adding a class. So there is the argument to be made for actually following the example. The examples exist for a reason. It could probably do a lot worse and a little more exposure to the object-oriented programming style he's advocating here with these copy and paste examples. I generally avoid classes. I stick to functions. This will automatically appear in the docs. Okay, sure. This is for experimentation's sake. You got to get over your fear, right? It's the reason I created that Linux thing. There's so much fear surrounding coding. So it says put this in core. So I'll do that. I run that. Okay, export class hello sayer, and that should apparently be in there now. Build the library, build the docs. Okay, same error on this one here. I am certainly missing something. So we ran that file. We didn't actually run these other things. So often there's dependencies. So default. Oh, that can certainly be an issue. No module named Nbdev. So this is the Anaconda. Oh, yeah. I did it under a different kernel. Do forgive me. Aha. Even though I added the kernel, I did not add the kernel here to Jupyter Notebooks. So this Anaconda here does not actually have access to where I installed Nbdev, which was in a virtual env. So of course I need to do this import. What would this be without importing the actual library we're talking about? So to get the kernel exposed here, let's see who is talking about that. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to just do a grab for it here in my journal under kernel. Yeah, okay, there's nothing wrong with what I showed there. And so I pick up the command that I actually know to do the trick. Because, I have dealt with this before. So anyone who's using virtual conda virtual directories, who created one through the command line tools like I tend to do, must also, not that I've had great success in the commands I've been trying to execute here, but you must also add. Now before I do this, I'm going to deactivate, because there's no reason. I should be in base is what I should be. I should do this from base. So this is making sure that Jupyter knows about other virtual environments, which become available as options as kernels here. Oh yeah? Well, I don't see that happening. That's why I'm doing a Control R for a refresh. Introducing complex tooling like Jupyter Lab into your workflow is not my natural inclination. I'm a Vim person. However, the rewards that exist along this path, particularly when you start bringing things like Nbdev into the picture, are tempting enough to even lure the hardest core Vimmer into the world of Jupyter Notebooks. And Nbdev, frankly, this is about layers upon layers of APIs. Jupyter makes a unique API available through which Nbdev exposes a number of other APIs, ways to interact with your programs. So, I did a refresh. Maybe if I hit new, there, if I hit new, there it is. There's my registered kernel, but that is also an available kernel here. So whereas before I only had Python 3 available, I have that as my preferred kernel. That's where I did my conda install. And so now this import, should have worked. See, there's Py38. Let's try that import from a Py38 Python shell. Yeah, okay, that import works there. So it seems that the thing that I conda installed is not actually available under the seemingly being used kernel. Maybe my restart was not full enough. Restart kernel and clear all outputs. Pi38 is my selected kernel. Run. Still, this is a little troublesome because let me make sure that command I executed registered the right place for the kernel. It was under the base. Oh, no. Remember that issue. Oh. That's where it installed it. Okay, so yeah, so it has the right to do that there, and it was using the one that was located on my machine and identified as Pi38. I do believe I did that correctly, but I can't be sure. The fact that it's not using the clearly accessible oh wait, it's accessible here. Yeah, under there. Is it accessible under base? That's an interesting test. And it's not. So I have correctly isolated the virtual folders from each other. They are in fact Python virtual environments. This is where people are going to say, why don't I just use pip env? There's other things out there that are fighting to be your dependency management systems. But this is with Anaconda now too, so I'm not sure. This is just the stuff you got to work your way through if you want to be using these tools. So exit out of Python here. That's our base. That is where we executed the command to give the kernel, but this may not be the right command. Well, I'm going to give in and pull up Anaconda Navigator and see what it has to say about virtual directories or virtual envs. Ugh. Come on. See, that's another thing, because I click somewhere else momentarily. I'm in the penalty box waiting for it to come up. Okay, here we are. Environments. So again, it knows that we have that. And when we switch to it, let us now launch Jupyter Labs from inside of here, given that we switched kernels. I'll quit out of Jupyter Lab the way it's currently running, which is this guy here, which you'll remember is in fact the server for this. So if I were to do this here, it's not there anymore. I'll get rid of this tab, because when I hit launch over here, first thing it's going to do is add a tab. It's going to bring up the same notebooks as I had before, but now it should be under the right kernel. Again, it indicates it is there, and whether this import works is a sign of whether it's under the right kernel or not. Well, it's a annoying thing, but I am going to have to give up on the concept of the conda virtual directories for a moment. I have something wrong, and I'm sorry I made you, the user, sit through all of that, but better me on fumbling around than you on actually trying to do it. So let me continue to impale myself on the path of just getting through this. We don't want that one poisoning our mental space. We want base, and I will be doing the reverse of poisoning the base space. This is not something I would normally do, but the rewards are just too great. So this is, I see backslashes. This is the Anaconda environment, which means we use the conda command at the top of the tutorials. Conda install. This is what we want. Maybe that would explain the Windows side not being able to find the conda commands as well. Or not the conda commands, but the Nbdev commands. This is a big deal. So things like Anaconda exist because getting all these things running correctly on a machine is hard to do. The tools in today's world, although through the heroic work of people like Jupyter and Anaconda, they're able to work. Right permission, see? So this is a conda install. I shouldn't have to elevate those permissions to target environments. This is because, yeah, I get it. So I'm going to need to run Anaconda base in elevated permissions and do this with live and learn. As much as I like to have stuff under the Windows script host, not Windows script host, but the unified Windows terminal, what I'm about to do here is to get the conda prompt. I guess it's Anaconda prompt. The main one, not my virtual directory or virtual env, right-click it, run as administrator, answer yes to that box, which you probably did not see because of the way this software works. Use this window here to run that conda install -c fastai space nbdev. I can't even make the font bigger with Control+. Maybe I can do it through properties, so it's a slight bit less painful to look at. Hey, yay. All right, so that's the same thing as we did under a virtual env, but now we're doing it under base. So that, get that back over here, it even feels weird to not have Jupyter Lab in the first location. That now runs successfully. Oh, so I keep this video, I don't edit it. So I'm sorry to have made you suffer for so long, but it's very difficult to get these libraries accessible under Jupyter Lab right now, even though it very much looks like it. I must have done something wrong with the path, I would imagine, in registering this location. And there's got to be somewhere where I can fix that. Somehow I can fix that. But for right now, we should maybe have more success running the whole thing top to bottom. Kernel, restart kernel, run all cells. Restart kernel and run all cells. which is another thing that Nbdev itself says it does as part of its process, which we will once again test. Think. So, that is a full screen shell like that. Now we're in Anaconda base. We're going to make another, I'm going to actually close out all of this stuff. Close all, Control-Shift-T, start fresh. Nuke the place from orbit, it's the only way to be sure. CD Github, CD pipulate rebase, and now it was the githooks command had actually worked from here. We got past the githooks command, and it was the publishing command that we were tripping up on, that I was tripping up on. So it's well beyond that at this point. Building lib we've had success with, and that should continue to be a success. It may be that we have to change something in the settings.ini for this step to work. The one place you do have to change things is what they say there. Settings.ini, we will be going into again. We can be sure of that. And there you have it. It worked. We apparently have published stuff. We have a README we can look at, I suppose. I guess from that location, ls. Okay, there's my hello world. And I guess this is markdown so that when it's put in a certain location, the Jekyll system picks it up and makes it into fully formatted output. I'm starting to get a feel for this. I'm starting to understand it. CD into pipulate, ls, and these are the automatically output files. So, finally, I have a picture for you. If I can find my stylus. Oh, what a video, what a video. But the idea is percolating around in my head about what's going on here. So you've got a machine, and we start with a machine, as we often do. This is just off the cuff. I don't even know exactly what I'm going to be drawing here, except that I do know the fact that you're always going to want where you keep all your repos. I do believe Git even has, or GitHub even has, like Git spaces or something that makes where you keep your Git repos. Now, the typical packaging for a Python package is the next level down would be a repo, and then finally in here would be your package code. And this is what's happening with Nbdev. So in Nbdev, I don't even know if I'm doing this right. I'm sure the camel case or whatever I'm using here is completely wrong. The commands are all lowercase, so let me try and stay consistent. Nbdev is going to let you work on your notebooks here. Okay, and it's going to auto sync them into this location here as .py files. And for the most part, that is the same thing as PyPy. Most people don't see it when they use Python every day, but the folder directory arrangement that is encouraged for making packages is in fact this here. And I'll do one final git pull over on, I'm just going to go back in my journal to where I left off so this makes more sense. We've actually gotten through, yay, we've completed the tutorial. So we should probably look at the docs, because there's like a published site. We already looked at the README. And you'd be like, oh, well, wait, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that when we start git committing this, it's going to clean it up so that it doesn't look like an IPython notebook with all its thousands of diffs every time. It's going to get it down to just the right number of diffs. And then we're going to have a bunch of other commands here that we can use to make sure that's true, it seems. And we're always going to have built-in tests and documentation and a clean GitHub repo. And that's all there is. What more do you need to turn IPython notebooks into an awesome developer environment? Synchronizing anything that's in your exports out to the .py files automatically. See, I should probably use color in here, but there's some real magic going on over here. If I use layers, that would have been nice, but if I back up a little bit just to where we do this, then I'll choose one of them magic colors. Magenta is a magic color. It doesn't really exist. Did you know that? .ipynb, the IPython notebook to the .py file synchronization. This is the magic. This is the Nbdev magic fairy dust that's being sprinkled on. It's being done through a command line. Yes, while you do have to actually click something. Command line, or for those Amiga users out there who more colloquially know it as the CLI. You do have to do that at times in a few places, but you don't have to do it everywhere, because it turns out that when you do a git push, it might be a git on a git commit. When you do a git action, there is a hook that steps in and does the extra things to spare you from having to do command line stuff all the time, like cleaning things up when you do a push to GitHub. So, when this stuff here goes out to GitHub, GitHub thinks that's okay because there's not thousands of diffs. Boom. Okay, so that's why we're going to Nbdev, to make our Jupyter Notebook repositories cleaner, to build in documentation with our code, have running code examples in with the documentation, and to have a wonderful way to manage our code here in the notebook. And every time we export it, it's available as a package to be imported. Presumably, I should be able to just, import from that location and have those libraries here to use. But I really should check out the coding style that's done, because I'm sure I'm not the first person to have that need. Okay, you have an exported PY. Now, can I import it elsewhere to actually use it as that package, as that shared package? Chances are the answer is a resounding yes, but you would do a pull from PyPy. You would push what you're working on out to PyPy, hence me choosing Pipulate as my place to do this. I urgently want to modernize that and build in Chrome automation and stuff, and have it self-documented systems where you can pull it up locally, read through the code, run it, because I'm done with custom UIs for the most part. Notebooks provide most everything you need to have customized products of all sorts to solve all sorts of needs in business. And, that's pretty much it. The essential tools of a knowledge worker and a viable alternative to VS Code. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon, and don't forget to subscribe.